So I've been using the Pentax K1 now for probably almost a month, and I can say with conviction that it is the best camera I've ever used. The quality is incredible. The image quality is better than the DP Merrill series that I was very enamored with before, and the quality is obviously better than all of the Nikon cameras I've used, especially with the pixel shift mode. And I think more importantly, as well as the image quality that I have with pixel shift when subjects are not moving, for example, it's very good day to day with 36 megapixels, and the actual body itself, the camera body, is very good. So it's not just a very good image quality like the DP Merrills were, very good sensor in a pretty abysmal camera. This is a great camera with great image quality, so it's been amazing so far. There are a few things that I've found that I've compared with a Nikon. I shoot normally with a Nikon D610. It's probably the best value full frame on the market. It's maybe not so much anymore, but certainly was at the time. Maybe it is actually now with some of the offers. So with the D610, obviously now you can get that for maybe 1,200 euros or even less, and this Pentax is 2,000 euros. The cameras are therefore not entirely comparable, but there are things that the Nikon does that the Pentax doesn't, and vice versa. I made a list of these things. I couldn't remember them all. They're on my phone. I'm going to share that list with you, and hopefully they're useful. So, first of all, we have compared to the Nikon the positives of the Pentax K1. We have the in-body stabilization, 5 stops, absolutely amazing, so useful. I found me able to shoot down to maybe 1/8 of a second with some of the lenses I have. Just such a useful feature. I can bring the ISO sensitivity all the way down. I can photograph where tripods aren't allowed, and there are an increasing amount of places where tripods aren't allowed. So the in-body stabilization has been very useful. The weatherproofing, I'm not worried about the camera getting wet. I've seen the videos on YouTube. There's one actually in Korean where it's been completely abused, and the same thing happens all over YouTube. Pentaxes really do seem to be very well weather sealed and seem to really hold up to abuse. I'm not going to abuse the camera, but I do feel comfortable using it in the rain in a way that I wasn't necessarily with a Nikon. The focus peaking, I don't know why Nikon doesn't have this, it's crazy. Focus peaking is incredibly useful. I've been photographing actually events with a 55mm f1.2 lens manual focus. Now obviously with the Nikon that would be almost impossible. The Viewfinder is not as good, and obviously for manual focusing, and the Pentax K1 actually allows me to use that focus peaking in the live view mode. Very useful, being able to zoom in all the way as well to check the focus. It's just such a useful feature day to day. The pixel shift, basically what it will do is it will take 4 different photographs and stitch them together. I have had artifacts even using the motion correction from using this, but when things aren't moving or when there's not very much movement in the frame, this has just been amazing. You know, the image quality is so amazing. The lack of noise in the shadows, incredible. The sharpness, the color, everything. When I take photographs with this camera and with the pixel shift, I'm just amazed by the image quality. It's just phenomenal. I mean, just as a photographer, even geeking out about it is just amazing. Pixel shift, I love it. It's really amazing. Switching between modes, very easy on this camera. They've actually got a lock feature on the mode button. The Nikon doesn't. The Nikon has paint to change modes. This is very easy. You can either lock it and have the additional catch to move it around, or you can just unlock it and then move it swiftly here as well. So changing modes is easier on this camera. The TAV and SV mode. Okay, there's 2 Pentax specific modes. One is actually choosing which sensitivity you want to be using, and one is using the shutter speed and the aperture, and then the camera will then set the auto ISO. Very useful, just very useful. It's also able to, for example, photograph in manual mode. I don't use manual mode all the time on the Nikon, and the only real reason is because if I'm going from somewhere very dark to somewhere very light, it takes a bit of a time to scroll through all the settings. Not so with the Pentax. There's actually a green button on the back. I literally press that button and it will just switch all the modes straight across and then go with the camera recommended settings. And there's a different ways of customizing that, so it might be in terms of MTF with some of the lenses that Pentax produces to choose the sharpest aperture, for example. It might be for faster shutter speed. having that green button to automatically set the exposure in manual mode is very, very useful. The TAV as well, I can set a shutter speed that I can handhold, an aperture that I'd like to use, and then the ISO will ramp up and down. I don't have to really think about the camera at all. Very, very useful again. The function dial is a nice feature on here. It's right by my thumb. I can turn it with one hand. Not that I'm going to do that really. I've got a number of options, for example the ISO sensitivity, the crop mode on and off, the Wi-Fi on and off, the HDR, the bracketing, continuous high, the grid and so on. These are options that I otherwise would have to go into the menus with. They're actually on the camera themselves. There's another dial at the back that's got a really nice feel to it, nice tactile, firm feel to it, and I can do the options that otherwise I would have to dig around in the menus for. So that dial has been very, very useful indeed. What would be nice to have is the ability to change some more settings or even to customize that, but to have the function dial itself has been very useful. The amazing image quality, I've mentioned that, even without using the pixel shift, the image quality on this is just incredible, just an amazing, amazing image quality. I think the Nikon D810 is similar as well. The quiet 300,000 rated shutter, by quiet, it's much quieter than the Nikon, it sounds nicer, it's much more dampened, and it's also rated to 150,000 shutter cycles. I've actually had two Nikon D2XS camera shutter failed, the D610 shutter failed. This one, because it's rated such a high 300,000 compared to maybe 150,000, I feel that much more happy using this camera and relying on the reliability of the shutter. Time will tell. Customizable viewfinder, I've actually got it so that all of the features are pretty much off apart from the focus point. So I have this really, really nice clean viewfinder with no grids on it. Nikon, I can't do that. I can also put in the electronic horizon and the grids as well, so that has also been quite useful. Depending on what I'm photographing, whether it's architecture or something else, I can have a nice clean viewfinder with no distractions, or I can use the guidelines, and that's going to work very well as well. Now we're going to get on to the negative points that I found with the camera, and I have been looking for them because it's things that I've missed. Generally in psychology, people will always enjoy the things that they have less than things they commiserate the things they lose. So the things that were missing from the Nikon, I've written down immediately that I found them in a way that I haven't put on the features that I've actually enjoyed with the Pentax. So this is going to be a list of things that I didn't like about the Pentax compared to the Nikon. No rear curtain flash. Obviously there's no flash on the camera, but for example if I'm using a manual flash, I want to be able to set rear curtain sync actually in the body. I can't do that. The focus beep, it will beep when it's in focus. With the focus peaking, or even just with the viewfinder, the focus beep tells me when it's in focus. Very, very useful, incredibly useful. But I want to be able to turn it off faster than I can. I want it on the function dial, because if I'm, for example, photographing and I'm photographing in a quiet event, or it suddenly gets very quiet, and that beep is going to be annoying, I've got to dig around in the menus to actually turn the beep off. Not so good. No hide image. Nikon has got this really useful feature. If you're photographing documentary, you're taking pictures where you really shouldn't be taking pictures, you can hide the images, and that's actually been a very useful feature, very easy to implement. Nikon has it, Pentax doesn't. The shutter speed is locked to 1/200th of a second for synchronization with the flash. That is, it's okay, Nikon is more or less the same. With the Godox AD360 flash, I found that there actually has been a little black line at the top, so I don't know if that synchronization is perfect, but it's okay. It's locked today, so if I actually, for example, want to use a faster shutter speed, I can't do it. If I increase the shutter speed past 1/200th of a second, what actually happens is the camera will just not use the flash. So it doesn't give me enough flexibility using the flash. The Nikon does. The Wi-Fi app, it's nice to have Wi-Fi in the camera. The app is buggy. I've tried to use it a few times. It's a pain to use, takes a long time to connect. I've got to put the password in every single time. It's a pain. It's very nice to have Wi-Fi in the camera. The actual application with the app of it is not good. The self-timer, only 2 seconds or 12 seconds. I mean, I'd like to be able to customize the number of seconds for the self-timer. Format of the memory cards is actually buried in the menu. Obviously, if you're photographing professionally, you want to be able to format the cards before the shoot. With this, I can't. So with a Nikon, it's much easier just to go and press 2 buttons on the camera and you can format the memory cards. With this one, you've got to dig around in the menus, not so good. The menus are not clearly numbered. The Nikon is clearly numbered. The Nikon is very easy to point out certain, or remember certain menu functions. With this one, it's not numbered, so you can't really find it, not clearly numbered. Limited lens selection. Okay, so there are some limited lenses, but they're actually a very limited selection of lenses as well. And the lenses that they are, in my opinion, overpriced. Maybe that's obviously because of the amount of demand for them is less than, for example, Nikon or Canon, the amount of competitors that would otherwise bring prices down. But I do find that the amount of lenses available for Pentax, good lenses, proper professional lenses, is quite limited. Hopefully they're going to improve that, but even from third party, it's not so good. I have managed to find some nice used lenses, but a lot of them are quite rare. There's, for example, an 85mm FA Star. Apparently it's a good lens. It's old and it's very, very rare. It's not sold anymore, can't find it. So lens selection is going to be one of the things about the Pentax K1 that is going to improve. It's not quite there yet. That said, I use this 28-105mm sort of kit lens. It's nothing like a kit lens. It's incredibly sharp. It's very, very good quality, and the only real downside is that the viewfinder is very dark with it. Slow to delete photographs. With a Nikon, it's just 2 buttons to delete a picture. Very, very quick, so like boom, boom, same button. With this one, I've got to delete, I've got to scroll up. It's a pain to delete any pictures. I want to delete photographs quite often, especially in the camera, and it's much more difficult to do that with this camera. It's much more fiddly. When I want to review the photographs, it goes straight back to the beginning, and that's obviously a pain. If I'm trying to have a photograph and then go back to it repeatedly, I've got to go scrolling back through the menus. With no touch screen, for example, to scroll through them fast, it's a pain to go back through them all. So the ability to scroll through the photographs is slow anyway, but the fact that it doesn't go back to the beginning is not good. This could be something that I haven't got, I need to dig through the manual, but I couldn't find anything about it. If you know anything about this, tell me. The viewfinder is dark and small. The idea is that this full frame viewfinder, when I compare it to the Nikon, I don't like it as much. It's difficult to turn the screen off. If, for example, I bring the camera up to my eye and the screen is on, especially when it's darker, it's very bright, it doesn't turn off automatically like the Sonys do, and therefore what I find is that it's blinding, it's irritating, and there should be an option to easily turn the screen off instead of having to go through a couple of buttons. It should just be it should be automatic, and if it's not, it should be 1 button. The viewfinder cover doesn't attach to the strap. Small thing, it'd be nice to have a viewfinder cover that attached to the strap. The viewfinder cover is the thing at the back. And it's also not easy to turn off the highlight warning. If I'm showing photographs, people will wonder what the red flashing is. I leave the highlight warning on generally, but if I'm going to show photographs, it would be nice to be able to very quickly turn the highlight warning off. So that was the last list of negatives about the Pentax K1 compared to the Nikon. I'm sure there's going to be more positives, more negatives that I haven't mentioned, and more that I'm going to discover. The overall synopsis though is that the Pentax K1 is by far the best camera that I've ever used. I love it to death, it's amazing. With this lens, it's both light, very, very good image quality. I'm not worried about rain. I imagine that the camera will last a long time, hopefully. And it's just amazing. The fact that it's got the proper professional old PC sync for the flash. The Nikon doesn't have that. The Nikon cameras, especially with a D610, were crippled to make the people upgrade to the more expensive cameras. Well, this one, it doesn't seem to be crippled at all. It's really putting it all out there. Everything is very well defined. It's very nice. There'd be a few things that would be nice to have, for example, USB 3 to take photographs of. But overall, it's just such a lovely camera to use, and I'm very, very happy with it. Lenses, I'm looking at some different options now, but for the moment, it's all been excellent. Any questions about the Pentax K1, raw photographs you might want to see, tests you might make me want to do, anything like this, just ask in the questions below and that'll be fine. Thanks so much.